Stop forcing manifestation. It's already yours. Law of assumption explained. What if everything you've ever wanted was already yours? But your very effort to get it is the only thing keeping it away. Every time you strive, wrestle, or force your manifestation into being, you are affirming its absence. And in a universe governed by consciousness, where Neville Goddard, where truth reveals that assumption creates reality, this struggle becomes your decree. I do not have what I seek. You pray, you visualize, you affirm, but you do it with the clenched fist of doubt. You fight to believe, you grind to receive, you hustle with hope, never realizing that you are the one writing the play. And forcing the scene only delays its appearance. Let me tell you something that will shake the walls of your old reality. Stop forcing manifestation. It's already yours. This is not poetic metaphor. It is law. The law of assumption does not operate based on effort, but based on identity. You do not manifest what you chase. You manifest what you are. And what you are is shaped by what you assume to be true, not what you hope will be someday. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you collapse time. You pull the future into the now. You don't create something new. You select it. That selection becomes your dwelling. And from that dwelling, the outer world reorganizes itself without your effort. People try to manifest with effort because they have been taught to believe in external power. They trust in action over imagination, in repetition over identity, in hustle over feeling. But manifestation is not a task to complete. It's a revelation of what already exists in consciousness. And when you know this, truly know it, you become still. Here's the secret most never hear. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you assume to be real. You say, I want wealth. But deep within, you still feel poor. You affirm 1,000 times, but live in the state of lack. So you create lack. The moment one begins to force a manifestation, they unknowingly affirm its non-existence. The very effort applied reveals the underlying belief. I do not yet have what I desire. This belief, although subtle and often unnoticed, is the true energy communicated to the subconscious. And the subconscious, being impersonal and obedient, responds faithfully, not to your words, but to your state of being. When effort is present, the state is one of separation. For one does not force what they already possess. One does not struggle to become what they already are. Forcing is the language of doubt. It is the mask of lack dressed up as ambition. It is important to understand that manifestation is not a matter of doing, but of being. The world does not move by outer action. It moves by inner conviction. Every scene in your external reality is the outpictured echo of an internal assumption. Therefore, when you attempt to manifest by action alone, when you affirm without feeling, visualize without belief, or demand without identity, you are playing a losing game. The outer world will always reflect back your inner contradiction. It will show you, with precision, the gap between your desire and your assumption. This is why forcing never works. It contradicts the law. Forcing says, I must make this happen. But the law says, it happens because you are. When you are wealthy in consciousness, the wealth appears. When you are loved in your imagination, the love flows. When you are healed in your inner reality, the body begins to reflect it. The need to push vanishes. Creation in its truest form is effortless. It is not born of pressure but of acceptance. The dreamer does not try to dream. The dream comes naturally. Likewise, the master of manifestation does not strain to create. They accept the unseen as real, and it externalizes on its own. The more one tries, the more distant the goal becomes. This is the paradox of all true spiritual law. Those who chase success with desperation rarely taste it. Those who grasp at love often repel it. Those who obsess over results find themselves in a loop of delay. It is not because the universe is cruel. It is because consciousness responds to the assumed identity, not the outer effort. One may scream for a thing, but if they do not believe they are the one who has it, the scream is powerless. It is the inner whisper, calm and certain, that bends reality. Many who study the unseen laws of creation fall into the trap of action. They believe that if they do more, say more, think more, the thing will come faster. But this belief is rooted in a misunderstanding. Manifestation is not a race. It is not a prize awarded to the most determined. It is a mirror ever responding, ever reflecting. And a mirror does not reflect the gesture. It reflects the essence. You may smile forcefully in front of it, but if your heart is troubled, the mirror cannot be fooled. It shows what is. So the key lies not in what you do, but in what you accept. Can you accept that it is already done? Can you walk as one who already has? Can you assume, even in silence, that the thing sought is already yours? This acceptance is not passive. It is the most powerful stance one can take. It declares to the universe, there is nothing to chase, for I have already become. From that place of quiet knowing, the world conforms. Children understand this better than adults. A child who pretends to be a queen does not beg others to play along. She declares her royalty with confidence and grace, and the world around her adapts. She does not force her kingdom into being. She simply lives in it. That is true manifestation. That is the art of becoming. The child does not force. She assumes. The mistake of forcing is not just ineffective. It is destructive. It weakens the mind. It fosters impatience. It feeds the illusion of time and separation. It builds a wall between you and the thing desired. For every push forward carries the echo of not yet, and not me, and not now. The more you push, the more real that echo becomes. Eventually, the effort becomes the experience, and the desire fades into a fantasy that always seems just out of reach. But when one lets go of effort, not through laziness, but through understanding, something shifts. The world grows quieter, the heart steadies, the mind stops grasping and begins accepting. And in that stillness, something sacred stirs. That which you stopped chasing begins to come toward you. That which you no longer force begins to unfold. That which you surrendered begins to manifest. To stop forcing is not to give up, it is to rise up. It is to know, before the senses confirm, that all is already yours. And when that knowing becomes your dwelling place, the world has no choice but to match it. This is the hidden power behind all creation. Not effort, not struggle, but assumption in stillness. When that becomes your natural state, manifestation becomes inevitable. To understand the real meaning of it's already yours, one must first abandon the linear view of life that most have been conditioned to believe. The idea that there is a sequence of steps leading from desire to attainment is useful in the world of action, but it is entirely false in the world of consciousness. Consciousness is not bound by time. It is not a progression from one point to another. It is a field where all realities exist now, and the only change that ever takes place is in awareness. When you shift your awareness, you do not create a new reality. You move into alignment with one that already is. Therefore, to say, it's already yours, is to speak of a truth beyond the senses, beyond logic, and even beyond what the rational mind can accept at first glance. Most people live in a state of waiting. They believe their good lies somewhere out ahead of them, in some distant future that will arrive if they work hard enough, pray long enough, or wait patiently enough. But the truth is, nothing is truly attained through time. What is called waiting is merely a delay in claiming what is already established in consciousness. The outer world, being a reflection, cannot bring you what you have not first accepted as true within. To claim that something is already yours is not to pretend. It is to recognize that in the world of imagination, in the realm of spirit, all things are present. They are not becoming. They are not on their way. They simply are. The moment a desire is born within you, the corresponding reality is created. You would not be able to long for something unless it already existed in some dimension of being. This is not wishful thinking, it is law. All possibilities exist. The version of you who has what you desire is not a fantasy. It is a living reality, waiting for you to identify with it. When you say, "It's already mine," you are not lying. You are awakening to the truth that every state of consciousness has a corresponding world, and your job is not to create that world, but to enter it. And you enter it not by movement, not by action, but by assumption. Assumption is the spiritual doorway through which realities are accessed. When you assume something is true, you inhabit that truth. You begin to think from it, rather than of it. You no longer look at the goal as something separate. You live from the end, and by doing so, the end begins to arrange itself through the medium of physical experience. But the change does not begin with the experience. The change begins with your knowing. "It's already yours" is not an affirmation meant to trick the mind. It is a fact. And once you allow yourself to live from this fact, you will notice that the striving ends. The desperation disappears. The grasping dissolves. Because now you are not asking for something, you are dwelling in it. You are not reaching, you are receiving. This shift is subtle but profound. In one state, you are the seeker. In the other, you are the possessor. And the outer world always obeys the possessor. What does this look like in practice? It looks like feeling now what you would feel if the desire were fulfilled. It looks like walking with the posture of someone who already has. It sounds like the tone of voice you would use if you had nothing left to prove. It is not arrogance, it is certainty. It is not pretending, it is becoming. When people repeat, "It's already mine," they often do so from a place of hope, not belief. But the phrase is not powerful until it becomes your inner reality. You must feel it as true, regardless of appearances. This is the test of faith, to hold the end as already accomplished when nothing yet confirms it. To smile inwardly because you know, deeply and quietly, that what you have assumed is more real than what your eyes presently see. The senses will always try to argue against this truth. They will say, "Look around. It isn't here." But remember, the senses report only what the mind commands them to see. Change your command, and the senses will soon follow. But they follow you, not the other way around. When you truly grasp that it is already yours, you no longer wake up in longing. You rise in gratitude. You stop negotiating with reality, and instead begin selecting your reality. You live with the assurance of someone who has already received. And that assurance, that deep inner yes, is what molds the clay of the universe around you. The beauty of this understanding is that it places the power back where it belongs. In your imagination, in your identity, in your assumption. You no longer chase. You no longer beg. You assume the state, and the state expresses itself. The outer world bows to the inner claim, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. "It's already yours" means there is nothing left to get, only something to realize. And once realized, the journey ends. Not because the thing has finally come, but because you finally remembered it never left. It was always there, waiting for you to arrive, not through effort, but through belief. Feeling is the secret. It is not the words you say, nor the thoughts you think in isolation, but the feeling that accompanies those thoughts that determines the fate of your world. Every idea clothed in emotion is impressed upon the subconscious mind, and the subconscious, being creative and without judgment, receives that impression and externalizes it as fact. If you wish to manifest anything in this world, you must first assume the state of the wish fulfilled, and then allow yourself to feel what you would feel if it were already true. That feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, the spiritual and the physical, the imagined and the real. When people speak of affirmations or visualization techniques, they often make the mistake of focusing solely on repetition. They say the same words over and over, hoping that somehow they will eventually break through the barrier of disbelief. But mere repetition without emotional conviction is barren. The subconscious does not respond to empty declarations. It responds to the emotional atmosphere in which those declarations are made. To speak a thing without feeling is to throw seeds onto concrete. It is the emotional tone of your inner conversation that plants the seed in fertile soil. Consider this: every feeling is a vibrational signature, and each signature calls forth a matching expression in the world. When you feel abundant, even in the absence of physical proof, you are harmonizing with abundance. You are aligning with that frequency, and soon your world must reflect it. When you feel loved, even if alone, you become a magnet for love. The feeling makes the claim, and whatever is claimed in feeling becomes form. This is why the disciplined use of imagination must always be accompanied by feeling. It is not enough to visualize yourself in a new home, holding a new job, or walking beside a desired partner. You must go further. You must allow yourself to feel what such a life would feel like. This feeling is not something artificial. It is not something you must force. It is something you permit. You allow it to rise naturally as you sink deeper into the reality of your assumption. You surrender your current identity and become the one who already has. From this new state of being, the feeling comes alive. And once it is alive in you, the outer world becomes its servant. Many try to manifest through mental effort alone. They analyze, they calculate, they strategize, and yet the results are inconsistent. Why? Because the subconscious does not respond to logic. It responds to feeling. Your rational mind may insist that something is impossible, but if you feel it to be true, the subconscious obeys the feeling, not the argument. It is moved by belief wrapped in emotion, not by intellectual persuasion. This is the key that unlocks all manifestation, the fusion of imagination and emotion into a single, potent act of inner knowing. You must learn to cultivate the feeling of the wish fulfilled as your natural dwelling place. You must visit it so often in your inner world that it becomes more familiar than your present condition. And as it becomes familiar, it becomes real. This is the process of embodiment. Not wishing for something to happen, but becoming the version of yourself who already has it. And that becoming is felt, not figured out. It is not a puzzle to solve. It is a presence to inhabit. Feel yourself into the state desired. Ask yourself sincerely, how would I feel if I were already the person I desire to be? How would I walk? How would I breathe? What thoughts would naturally arise in my mind? What emotions would dominate my inner landscape? These questions are not hypothetical. They are doorways. And when you answer them, not with your intellect, but with your inner senses, you pass through that doorway. You leave behind the old state and enter the new. And once you enter, you must remain. Do not return to the old identity by checking for signs or searching for evidence. Stay faithful to the feeling. Let it anchor itself in your being. Feeling is the substance of reality. It is the texture of the unseen. When you master it, you master creation. You no longer live as a victim of circumstances, but as the source of them. You no longer wait for change. You become it. And in becoming it, the world responds in kind. It mirrors back your assumption, not in theory, but in tangible, undeniable experience. Whatever you consistently feel yourself to be, you become. Not because the world changes first, but because you do. The world is always secondary. It waits on you, not in word, but in feeling. And when the feeling is sustained, the unseen becomes seen, the imagined becomes real, and the promise is fulfilled, not by effort, but by the quiet power of assumption clothed in emotion. Imagination is the only creative power. All that is seen was once unseen, not because it had not yet existed, but because it had not yet been claimed by consciousness. Every structure, every invention, every work of art, every empire was first imagined. Long before the stone was laid, long before the blueprint was drawn, the image lived in the mind, and not just as a fleeting thought, but as a sustained vision, as something that had been accepted as true in the invisible before it ever touched the visible. What you imagine with feeling becomes the womb of reality. It is the inner world that gives birth to the outer. Many have been conditioned to believe the physical world is primary, that imagination is nothing more than a shadow play of fantasy. Yet, those who understand the structure of reality know that the physical is the final result, not the cause. The cause is always a movement within consciousness, an imaginal act. When you imagine something, and you do so with belief, with clarity, and above all, with feeling, you are not merely daydreaming. You are selecting a version of reality from the infinite storehouse of possibilities. You are entering into a state, and every state has a corresponding world. To dwell in a state is to summon its world into being. This is not theory. It is law. When you understand that the imagination is not a passive faculty, but the generative power itself, you begin to treat it with reverence. You no longer use it aimlessly. You begin to imagine deliberately, purposefully, as a sculptor molds clay, aware that each scene you build within carries the weight of creative force. The challenge for many is not that they cannot imagine, but that they imagine unconsciously. They repeat the same inner conversations. They replay old memories. They fear future outcomes, all within the space of imagination. And then they wonder why their life does not change. The answer is simple. They are creating, but they are creating from old material. They are dwelling in unwanted states and thereby sustaining them. The outer world, being faithful, simply reflects what they most often entertain within. Imagination does not discriminate between wanted and unwanted. It simply creates. It mirrors the mood. It obeys the feeling. It does not care whether your scene is joyful or sorrowful, whether it is constructive or destructive. It only asks, what are you assuming to be true now? And whatever that answer is, it forms the mold into which reality is poured. To use imagination consciously is to step into your rightful place as the creator of your experience. You close your eyes, you turn inward, and you construct scenes that imply your desire is already fulfilled. You hear the voices you would hear. You see the images you would see. You feel the satisfaction of the result being real. And then you persist in that imaginal act. You return to it often, not to force it into reality, but because it is already real in you. The more you dwell in it, the more natural it becomes. And once it feels more natural than your present condition, the bridge of events begins to form. This bridge is not always predictable. It may come through unexpected channels. It may arrive by means you could never foresee, but it will come. Because imagination, once fused with belief, moves the universe. It aligns circumstances. It inspires others. It dissolves barriers. And it does so without effort, because its power is not derived from the physical realm, but from the spiritual. Do not wait for outer facts to change before you change within. That is to reverse the order of creation. Begin in the imagination. Begin in the unseen. Construct your world there and feel its reality. Speak from it. Walk from it. Make your decisions from the assumption that it is already true. And in doing so, you bring the invisible into form. You give life to your desire not by chasing it, but by embodying it. You may say, but I have imagined many things that never came to pass. Look closer. Did you imagine them with faith or with doubt? Did you sustain the feeling of the end, or did you vacillate between desire and disbelief? The power is always present, but it responds not to what you wish for, but to what you accept. And that acceptance is felt, not forced. Imagination is divine. It is not limited to fantasy. It is the very structure of reality. When you understand this, You begin to take responsibility for every scene you allow to live within. You realize you are always planting seeds, and the harvest you see tomorrow depends on the imaginal acts you perform today. There is no outer authority greater than the one within you. There is no condition that cannot be reshaped by the inner vision. When you accept that imagination is the cause, you become free. You stop reacting and begin selecting. You no longer hope, you assume. And from that assumption, your world is made anew, not by chance, not by fate, but by conscious, deliberate creation. Surrender is the most misunderstood power in the process of manifestation. Most imagine surrender as a form of weakness, a passive resignation to fate, or the giving up of desire. But true surrender is not the abandonment of desire. It is the release of resistance. It is the art of letting go of the need to control the unfolding of events, and allowing the assumption of the wish fulfilled to take its rightful place as the guiding current of your reality. When one surrenders properly, they are not doing less. They are entering the state where all things are done for them. There is a sacred silence that follows true surrender. It is not filled with the noise of panic, nor the chatter of timelines and steps. It is filled with knowing, a deep, internal stillness where you recognize that the seed has been planted and no further interference is needed. The ground will do what it was designed to do. Just as a farmer does not need to dig up the earth each morning to check if the seed is growing, neither must you check constantly to see if your manifestation is arriving. It is in the stillness that it grows. It is in the absence of meddling that it flourishes. Struggle is rooted in the belief that you are separate from what you desire. It is built on the false premise that the thing must be acquired from outside, earned through effort, or attracted by force. But surrender understands that the desired reality already exists. It is not waiting to be created. It is waiting to be selected. And selection does not require effort. It requires identity. You become the one who has. You no longer ask when it will come, because you dwell in the state where it is already done. And that dwelling is the evidence of surrender. When you surrender, you do not detach from the desire. You detach from the version of yourself who lacks it. You no longer identify as the seeker. You abandon the posture of longing. You give up the habits of chasing, doubting, and measuring time. You withdraw attention from the absence and place it fully in the assumption that it is already so. And this shift, though subtle, creates a new center of gravity. The mind stops pulling. The emotions stop contradicting. You begin to move with quiet confidence. You take action only when inspired, not out of fear. You respond to life as though your desire is already fulfilled. And in doing so, you call it forth. Many fear surrender because they confuse it with passivity. But surrender is the highest form of spiritual activity. It is not the absence of movement, but the alignment of all movement with belief. It is not standing still in despair, but walking forward in assurance. And that assurance must be felt. It must become the tone of your inner conversation. You speak as though it is done. You carry yourself as though the promise has already been kept. You no longer try to convince the world. You no longer try to convince yourself. You simply accept. This acceptance produces a lightness of being. You are no longer weighed down by doubt or deadlines. You release the need to calculate how it will come, through whom, or by what means. You understand that the mechanism is not your concern. The selection is. The internal posture is. You become like a passenger who, having boarded the train and taken the seat, does not pace the aisles or demand to drive the engine. You trust the path. You trust the track. You rest, knowing the destination is already set. From this restful knowing, manifestation flows swiftly, not because the outer world is responding faster, but because you are no longer blocking it with your resistance. You are no longer sending mixed signals. You are no longer affirming with your lips while denying with your heart. Surrender unifies you. It brings coherence to your vibration. It cleanses your inner world of contradiction and prepares the outer world to match it. When you surrender, life becomes a dance, not a war. You move in harmony with your assumptions. You allow the unseen to do its work. And the more you release control, the more you gain dominion. Because true dominion does not come from force. It comes from consciousness. And consciousness, when it rests in fulfilled desire, makes everything bow to it. So surrender, not in defeat, but in triumph. Surrender not because you've given up, but because you've received. The invisible hand of creation works best when you step back and allow it to weave the threads you cannot see. And when you do, you will watch the world arrange itself perfectly and effortlessly in accordance with what you have assumed to be true. Not by your struggle, but by your surrender. Manifestation through stillness and faith is the most advanced, yet most natural expression of the creative law. In the modern world, people are trained to act, to hustle, to always do something to force results into their experience. But what they have not been taught is that the most potent form of creation emerges not through movement, but through stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is alignment. It is the state in which the inner world is so fully assumed to be true that the outer world must conform to it without interference, without delay, and without confusion. In stillness, the mind is quiet. The questions that once echoed, how will it happen? When will it happen? What should I do? Fall silent, and in their place emerges a calm knowing it is already done. This knowing is not built on external evidence, nor does it rely on confirmation from the five senses. It comes from an inner conviction that cannot be explained, only lived. That conviction is called faith. Not faith in the future, not faith that something might happen if you are lucky or worthy, but faith in the present reality of the unseen. Faith is the acceptance of the unseen as the only reality. It is trust in the invisible blueprint, even before the structure appears before your eyes. Most people are waiting to believe. They say, I will believe it when I see it. But true manifestation requires the opposite. You must see it inwardly before you ever believe in its appearance. You must feel its truth while the world still denies it. And that ability to remain faithful to the inner image, regardless of contradiction from the outer world, is the secret that separates those who create effortlessly from those who live in endless effort. Stillness is the chamber where this faith is cultivated. It is where all the noise of doubt dissolves. In stillness, you stop reacting. You stop negotiating with appearances. You cease trying to bend reality with force, and instead you allow your assumption to become so vivid, so full of life and detail and emotion, that it overrides every opposing fact. You rest not because you are indifferent, but because you are sure. You rest not because you have given up, but because you have accepted that the thing you desire is already flowing towards you through channels unseen. Faith, in this sense, is not a belief in the unlikely. It is not crossing your fingers and hoping for a miracle. Faith is loyalty to the unseen. It is the steady, unshakable awareness that your assumption is more real than the evidence of your senses. When you possess this kind of faith, you do not look for signs. You do not ask for proof. You do not need reassurance. You have already received the only proof that matters, the feeling. And once that feeling is established, reality begins to shift to match it. To the world, it may seem that you are doing nothing. But inwardly, you are creating. You are selecting the version of yourself and your world that you desire. And you are doing so without effort, without noise, without explanation. This is true mastery, to sit still and know, to remain calm in the face of delay, to walk through your day as if your manifestation were already fact. And this walk is not pretense. It is the result of deep inner certainty. You become as one who already has, already is, already lives in the reality they once longed for. And because you do, the bridges of incidents unfold. People, events, timing, all align in harmony with your state. Not because you chased them, but because you attracted them through the magnetic field of belief. And that belief was sustained in silence, cultivated in solitude, and delivered through stillness. When you master stillness, you move through life with a different rhythm. You are no longer rushed. You are no longer thrown by appearances. You become patient but not passive. You become trusting but not blind. You carry within you a quiet force that bends reality in your favor, not because you overpower it, but because you are one with it. That union is born in stillness and solidified through faith. Every true transformation begins in silence. Every great manifestation begins in stillness. You must go within, quiet the voices of fear and reason, and dwell in the unseen with such vivid clarity that it becomes your home. When you live from that place, the world cannot help but reflect it. It must. Because consciousness is the only reality, and what you accept in consciousness you invite into form. So learn to be still, not to wait, but to know. And in that knowing, all things unfold. Not by your command, but by your acceptance. Not by your striving, but by your faith. And from that sacred place, you will witness the miraculous become ordinary, and the invisible become your daily life. And so, what you seek is not far from you. It is not a matter of time, distance, or chance. It is a matter of awareness. The moment you stop forcing and begin assuming, the moment you live not in longing but in the end, the world begins to mirror your conviction. It does not delay because of fate. It delays because of doubt. And doubt is nothing more than forgetting who you are. You are not here to struggle, to chase, or to hope. You are here to remember that creation begins and ends in consciousness. It is not what you do that moves mountains, but what you accept as true within. The law is simple, feel it real, and it becomes real. Assume the state, dwell in its feeling, and let the silence prove it. The world is clay, imagination is the hand, and faith is the fire that sets it. There is no power outside of you. There is no delay apart from your own inner contradiction. Surrender the fight, enter the stillness, and know that what you seek is already yours, not in some distant future, but here now within. Assume it, feel it, trust it, and allow the unseen to become seen, not through effort, but through divine certainty. Live as the one who already is, and the world will show you what you have always known in silence. It is done.